Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
This is A Different Perspective with Kevin Randle. A retired U.S. Lieutenant Colonel, Kevin Randle has been studying UFOs for nearly 50 years. Kevin has investigated some of the most famous UFO cases in the world and has been consulted for dozens of documentaries about UFOs. Considered one of the leading experts into the Roswell UFO crash of 1947, Kevin has written more than 25 books about UFOs, including the recently published Roswell in the 21st Century. Now, here is the host of A Different Perspective, Kevin Randle.
Even though you cannot tell, I am back from Roswell. I am sitting in my plush radio studio. I will be joined shortly by Robert Schaeffer, he of Bad UFOs, which is a website that you can take a look at, www.badufos.com, and he is one of the leading skeptics, I think, in the, I was going to say the free world, but I will say the entire world. Just a little preliminaries here. The next few weeks, we will be reviewing my trip to Roswell. I've got some interesting guests coming up. Don Schmidt will be on. Kathleen Marden, who was the niece of Barney and Betty Hill, will be on. And Alexander Rojas will be on to talk about the unidentified and the Tic Tacs. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to have Robert on the show, is because he has some interesting information to share about that. For those who are interested, which includes me, by the way, Robert Schaeffer is a writer with a lifelong interest in astronomy and the question of life on other worlds. He is one of the leading skeptical investigators of UFOs and wrote Skeptical Vibrations column in the Skeptical Inquirer for almost 40 years. Oh, my Lord, he's almost as old as I am. In his book, Psychic Vibrations, reprints some of the columns. His most recent book, Bad UFOs, which is also the name of the blog, which I mentioned earlier, that casts a skeptical eye on claims about UFOs. He is also the author of UFO Sightings and has appeared on many radio and TV programs. His writings and reviews have appeared in such diverse publications as OMNI. For those of you who don't remember, it was sort of a fancy science fiction magazine back in the 1980s, 1990s. Scientific American, Spaceflight, Astronomy, The Humanist, Free Inquiry, Reason, and others. He is a founding director and past chairman of the Bay Area Skeptics, a local skeptics group in the San Francisco Bay Area, which makes perfect sense to me. Robert lives near San Diego, California. He has worked as a data communications engineer in the Silicon Valley and sings professional opera productions. Oh my God, not opera. Robert Sheaffer, welcome to A Different Perspective.
Thank you, Kevin. Yes. Oh my goodness, opera. How can that be?
They just scream at the top of their voices and annoy me.
Well, something like that, yes.
Let me ask you a question that springs to my mind immediately. Is there a UFO sighting that you found that you actually think might be unidentified, which is not necessarily to suggest that it's an alien spacecraft, but there is no real solid explanation for?
No, I mean, it's true that there are some cases that they sound intriguing, but we really don't have a whole lot of, what can we say, final information about. People keep talking about Cash Landrum case in 1980, and supposedly they had these physical effects after their sighting and so on. Then when you try to look at it carefully, you find, well, these physical effects really aren't that well documented, and you can't separate it from things that, conditions that they had before and so on. So, I mean, there's some of these cases that you can argue back and forth about, but as far as anything that looks really convincing, like, oh my gosh, we've got to have some kind of a remarkable explanation for this. No, I don't know anything that's quite in that category.
What about level land? Because you had the object interacting with the environment, you have multiple witnesses at multiple locations independently reporting something.
Again, I'm not really up on the full details of that. I would admit that sounds like one of the better cases. But again, when you hear about effects and so on, you have to really look into this carefully and see, exactly what was reported and when, and were these completely independent and so on. So, no, I agree. It probably would be good to look, to get more information on that one. And of course, the further back this gets in time, because what are we talking here, 1957 or something? That's by now that's ancient history. Just about us old guys were kids back then. So it's.
Well, I was just thinking that, I mean, you can pretty well establish the independent nature of a lot of the witnesses because it wasn't reported in the media, and they were calling the sheriff's department or the police department level land all around the same time. So there was really very little opportunity for cross-contamination. And the thing that bothers me about level land, and I didn't mean to go off on this tangent, but the thing that bothers me about level land is that NICAP, which was run by Don Kehoe, the civilian organization,
UFO group at the time.
Yeah, and the Air Force were busy arguing over how many witnesses there were and how many locations, rather than bothering with trying to gather the facts of the landing of the interaction between the craft and the witnesses. So that's one of the things that bothered me about that. But the thought that crossed my mind, because we've kind of talked about this before, but I've always been of the opinion that you could find a case that was you couldn't explain in the mundane, which doesn't lead you to the extraterrestrial by any means, but are skeptics willing to say, we just don't know, we don't have a good explanation for it?
Well, it would depend on the case. Like I said, I've read, kind of the summary of level and case, but as far as, going into it in some detail, I haven't. I suppose if you wanted, we could do that at some later time. I need a little time to dig into this and see what to say. One thing that did occur to me was, again, people talk about ball lightning, and I thought of ball lightning as one possibility for that case. However, I'm not sure that I really believe in ball lightning or not. It's one of those things that's, on the one hand, there seems to be some evidence for it, and on the other hand, it's one of those things that just keeps getting reported but never really gets, conclusively demonstrated, conclusively photographed and videoed. So, and also the physics of so-called ball lightning seems to be rather dubious, which is not to say that it's impossible, but it's just that kind of would count as a strike against it.
Well, that's interesting you bring up the ball lightning, because the Air Force explained the level land sightings as ball lightning.
Right.
And I thought it was very funny that you're explaining something that we're not even sure exists to explain something else that we're not even sure exists.
Right. As I said, I'm not even sure about the ball lightning existing.
Well, that was what caught my attention. I thought it was kind of interesting. I didn't mean to get off on this tangent, but it was a question that just kind of popped into my mind, because I know when Hector Quintanilla was investigating the Socorro landing, he could not come up with an explanation, and he finally labeled it as unidentified. I think in his book he said that he was sure that the explanation for it resided in Lonnie Zamora's mind, meaning that it was made of something that Zamora observed or saw or thought that would provide an explanation, but he just never got to it. And I thought it was interesting that we have a case where there's occupants, creatures seen, that the Air Force actually labeled as unidentified. And I mean, at the time he was the Air Force guy on that. So
right.
It just kind of struck me that he didn't try to force fit some kind of explanation to Socorro, even with the creatures. And I just wondered if a number of the skeptics, and I'm thinking of skeptic as opposed to debunker, had ever come across a case as, well, I just don't have an explanation for it. It's an interesting case. Doesn't necessarily prove their spacecraft, but it's an interesting case.
Well, I recall you wrote a piece a year or so ago, essentially asking, did Zamora make the whole thing up? And it's an interesting thought, because actually, and I wrote a blog piece about that. If you go to the Bad UFOs, and in the search box up in the corner, just enter Zamora, and it should come right up. And in which I talk about the problems of let's set aside for the moment any claims about an extraterrestrial. Could it be like a hot air balloon, or a propane-powered hot air balloon, which kind of fits the description to some extent, could have two guys jumping out. But it did, and then I go into what's wrong with each one of these explanations. I mean, a thing like that would probably take 10 minutes to disappear or more, as it lifted, and apparently it allegedly disappeared rather quickly. And then there's a student hoax hypothesis, and we've heard a lot about that. And again, in theory, that could be, but exactly what did they hoax and how did they do it? And then how did they get away after doing it? Because any of these scenarios would have the hoaxer or whoever would still be there, maybe 1,000 feet away or however far from Zamora, so that when the second officer arrives, which is just a short time later, presumably the hoaxer would still be there, but they weren't. So, and I don't know, if I had to come up with an explanation right now, I would say the thing that is the least unlikely is, as we said before, did Zamora just make the whole thing up? Was it his hoax rather? Well,
let me stop you here, because I'm going to have to take a short break. And when we come back, we'll explore this a little further, and then we'll try to get to the AATIP program and the stuff that has been going on lately. It may lead us to disclosure, but I wanted to just kind of pose that question to you. And since we're off on Zamora, I think we need to take a look at that. I'll have more information up about my Roswell trip and other things at my blog at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And of course, like I said, Robert Schaeffer is www.badufos.com, and he has alternative explanations for a lot of this stuff. We will be back right after this, so please stick around.
It's hard to listen to the news without realizing we're living in volatile, unprecedented times. Yet never has there been such an opportunity to transform the human condition. As old structures fail, where can we find the guidance to co-create a better way? Find Your Path Home is an ever-evolving, leading-edge information, education, and healing resource center designed to support and guide you on your path to unity and enlightenment. Based on sound principles employed by shaman worldwide, we provide techniques that can support you through the current transitions, offering online shamanic classes, international long-distance shamanic healing sessions, complimentary Mission Evolution radio episodes and Stairway to Heaven TV vignettes, seminars, retreats, and much more. All of this can be found on findyourpathhome.com.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me. simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
I am here with Robert Schaeffer, one of the leading skeptics, and I think fairly bright fellow. When we left, we were talking about Lonnie Zamora and the possibility that there was something in Lonnie Zamora's head that would explain the Socorro sighting. And back quite a while ago, I was doing a show with Ben Moss and Tony Angiola, and they were talking about how 3 people had called the police station before Lonnie Zamora had gone out to find the thing, talking about this thing in the sky. And I'd asked them repeatedly, did you check the police logs? And they never gave me a good answer. But as I was looking through the case file, I found a report by Richard Holder, who was the Army officer who was stationed at the White Sands Missile Range, and his duty station was closer to Socorro than Alamogordo. So he lived in Socorro, and he was one of the first people on the scene. And he wrote a report that very night, April 24th, 1964. That very night, he wrote that 3 people had called the police department. Nobody bothered to get their names. Nobody tried to find them. But there's evidence that at least 3 other people saw the thing in the air, something in the air, heard the roar of the thing prior to Zamora going out and finding it. That seems to lift it away from Zamora making something up or inventing the hoax in some fashion.
Right.
So
that would tend, assuming if we accept that, that would tend to suggest that that would tend to favor, I think, the propane hot air balloon hypothesis. Because remember, at this time, now today, the hot air balloon, the propane balloon, is a familiar sight, especially in New Mexico, but in many places. But at this time, we're talking 1964, and it was actually a sort of an experimental thing. There weren't very many of them around, and they were not commercially available. And it was, it was a big deal when one of those things would be seen. So I suppose it's possible that somebody from somewhere nearby had, and that would explain the whoosh. When this thing fires the propane, and the fire to generate the warm air to cause the balloon to rise. But as I said, the only problem with that is that I would think it would take a long time for that balloon to rise up in the air and disappear, whereas if the other officer came relatively quickly and didn't see it, then, well, I really don't know for sure what to say.
And we have the landing traces on the ground.
Right. Either somebody hoaxed it or something landed there like a hot air balloon and made the impressions in the soil.
But it sounds like you would concede that we really don't have a good explanation for what Lonnie Zamora saw. It is
right. I would say it's not 100% that we can say what exactly happened there.
Well, that was all I was getting at.
Yeah.
I think we've come to a wonderful conclusion here.
Yeah.
We agree on something. Hot damn. Yeah. I didn't say that in the video, by the way. Well, did you want to make another comment about the Zamora case before I move on?
No, that's okay.
So we have a case. We actually have a couple of cases that may be in fact unidentified, which does not take us to the extraterrestrial, but something interesting was going on in these locations. Level land, which by the way isn't all that far from Socorro when you look at the entirety of the United States. And then we could throw in the Lubbock Lights and a few other things right around that area and just really kind of cram UFOs into that area of Mexico.
I don't think that the Lubbock lights amount to very much.
But there are the photographs.
Yeah, but the photographs, they don't. First of all, the witnesses say the photographs don't really match what they saw. Second of all, he's got, what is it, 2 photos there, I think, or 3, and there was no. I forget exactly what the analysis says, but basically, given that they're in the same relative positions in all the photographs, it's like he made some sort of an object and photographed it. And I mean, they're just lights. It's just black and white.
It's just black and white, and it's blobs in the sky in kind of a leaf-shaped formation.
Almost certainly, the photograph is a hoax. The witnesses saw something very likely.
Let me break it. I actually talked to Carl Hart Jr., the man who took the photographs. He was 19 at the time.
Right.
And I was in Lubbock in the mid-1990s on a different investigation, and on a lark, I looked his name up in the phone book. Lo and behold, he was there. So I called him.
Yeah.
So at this time, he's in his 60s. And you know as well as I do that 99% of the UFO photographs are taken by teenage boys, and 99% of those are hoaxes.
Yeah, probably.
But they eventually come out and tell us it's a hoax. And some of the famous UFO photographs have been admitted hoaxes now.
Yes.
When I talked to Hart in the mid-1990s, and there's absolutely no ramifications if he'd hoaxed the photographs, and the Air Force had threatened him with all kinds of dire consequences if he was lying to them, as did the newspaper and a number of other people said, if you've hoaxed this, you're in big trouble with us. And I asked him at the time, what did you photograph? He says, I still don't know. So I don't think he hoaxed them, which again doesn't take us to the extraterrestrial. It just means I don't think that Hart hoaxed them.
It just means that if he did hoax them, he won't admit it.
That too.
Which doesn't really prove much one way or the other.
I was just caught by the sincerity, and I happened to have a chance to talk to the guy in the mid-1990s, and he seemed to be very sincere about it, and he just gave no kind of indication that he'd hoaxed them or anything like that, and he just said, I don't know what I photographed. So it was just kind of, but the real point is Lubbock isn't that far from Levelland, which we were talking about, which isn't all that far from Roswell, which isn't all that far from Socorro. So you've got all this interesting UFO activity.
Maybe you've discovered a cousin of the Bermuda Triangle. This is the Southwest UFO Triangle where unexplained cases occur.
Yes, there you go. Well, the reason I had called you originally, or proposed this program to you originally, was to talk about unidentified and the AATIP program and all of that sort of thing. I didn't have an opportunity to see the last episode because I was down in Roswell and we were doing all kinds of Roswellian things. And I think at the time it was on, we were actually eating dinner at the Cattle Baron. I was with Paul Davids and Don Schmidt and Tom Carey, and we just had a nice little dinner there. And I mention all this just for, I guess, atmosphere. And then the excuse I didn't see the program. I'm sure you watched the last episode, and I was surprised that Stephen Bassett didn't even like it.
Yes, I was going to mention that. He said Stephen Bassett of, what is this, Paradigm Research. He's one of these guys who's always talking about disclosure. Any day now we're going to have disclosure of all the government UFO secrets. And then he, and I got this thing here. It says, it talks about the so-called unexplained fires. That was a big thing in the episode 6 in Sicily, supposedly, unexplained fires that, here's what Bassett says, that it said the TTS-ASS, I don't think that's what he meant. Well, whatever. Could have found
I think what he's referring to is he's referring to the To the Stars Academy, I think is what he's referring to there.
Well, To the Stars, Academy of Arts and Sciences. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. The helicopter rotor bird. The helicopter rotor hit birds. Also, it was not a military helicopter. It was equivalent to a police helicopter. That's good. He said, where did he say he was? Let's see. The 6th episode of Unidentified was flawed to the point of being grotesque. Every aspect of the production is designed to be dark and so on. PRG was surprised at the TTSA or TTSA's lack of credulity regarding those assertions by the Italians. But he said, when he says lack of credulity, I think he means their credulity or their lack of skepticism regarding, and this guy, Stephen Baird is, believes in a whole lot of oddball stuff. And
you mean Stephen Bassett? Stephen Bassett.
Yeah, Stephen Bassett. Yeah. If even he is essentially, is calling him out on this or being gullible, then you'd have to be TTSA gullible in the extreme to just believe all these stories. Also, I've been doing a little bit of research on this. The guy who is their source, TTSA's source on this guy, Vedruccio, is... it turns out he's not just a ufologist and some sort of, I'm trying to recall what else he does. Supposedly he's in the Navy or something, or retired from the Italian Navy. And he also has this device, which is supposed to be like a cancer detection device, some electrical thing. Well, I contacted Dr. Harriet Hall about this. She is known as the SkepDoc. She is she's a frequent contributor to Skeptic Magazine and others in terms of dubious health claims. I showed her information about this thing, described it to her. She says it's pure quackery. This so-called medical device.
What you're saying is their source in Italy, the guy who was talking about the helicopter that had been shot down or knocked down by some kind of beam, he has a device that he claims can cure cancer, and she's suggesting that it's like all those electrical devices from the 20th century that could detect all kinds of maladies. It's just not good science.
Right. Well, he's not. I don't know if he's claiming that it treats cancer or that it just is like an early detection of cancer. But one way or the other, it's highly, highly dubious.
Well, I think when you start talking to witnesses, and you first impressed, I guess, maybe with their sincerity, and then you start getting into their background, and you find they've been involved in all these other things, it certainly doesn't help their credibility at all. We're going to have to take a short break here. I'm with Robert Schaeffer, he of www.badufos.com. I, of course, am from www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And over the next few weeks, I'll be doing more about Roswell and talking about these sorts of things, including Stephen Bassett's surprising column about unidentified that came out just recently in the last day or so. I will be back with Robert Schaeffer in just a moment, so please stick around.
How would your life change if you could develop the business and personal skills that you need in order to make more money? Do you want to learn how to achieve your big life goals faster? Then go to findhiddenmoney.com and get the Goal for It online course. The course teaches you how you can set and achieve your biggest goals while completely overcoming the roadblocks to your goals so that you can realize your dreams and imagine more success. Go to findhiddenmoney.com.
Memorable dynamic presentations are a not-so-secret weapon in the business world. Do you have a powerful message that must be shared, but you haven't found a way to deliver that message? Do you want to be known as a top public speaker who gets amazing results? Are you ready to create and deliver your powerful message? Thomas Hides can help you create and deliver your speech to get the results you desire. Visit iconquality.com.
Did you expect your business to flourish, but instead it plateaued or didn't get off the ground yet? Would you like to achieve massive goals and discover new sources of income within your business? When you're ready to experience that type of success with fast results, Cindy Hendricks is the business coach for you. Her work with entrepreneurs and business owners has been life-changing. To get you and your business where you want to be, go to imaginemoresuccess.com.
Has the fear of public speaking stalled your business or personal life? What would you give to develop and maintain supreme confidence? Have an invaluable private program to always perform at your best. Imagine how you would feel. You can have all that and so much more today with Thomas Hyde's life-changing course called Number One Fear Unleashed. Visit numberonefear.com and be liberated from your fear of public speaking.
I am still here, and Robert Schaeffer is still here, which is not surprising, I suppose. We were talking about the last episode of Unidentified and the Italian military officer who was, I guess, the source of some of their information. And you were suggesting something about his background in creating a device that would detect cancer as opposed to cure it. And that certainly doesn't help his credibility.
No, it doesn't. It's one of these dubious electrical devices. It's according to according to medical establishment, if you will, that it's not valid. It's quacky. It's based on very dubious principles. He was also, now this guy Bruno Vedruccio claims he has a PhD in electronic engineering, although he doesn't say where he obtained it, from which school. He says he invents and patents the bioscanner, the medical diagnostic device. He was talking about electromagnetic energy and electromagnetic vibrations and frequencies. He's saying that the UFOs have certain frequencies, that they sent out this ray, supposedly, that the UFO that was following out of the helicopter allegedly shot out an electromagnetic ray and hit the helicopter, which damaged the blades and forced it to land. And I've been trying to get more information about this. Nobody seems to have much. Some people are making statements. Bassett said that the helicopter blades hit a bird, and that's possible, but I don't know what his source for that information is. Somebody else posted in the discussion of this that an investigation supposedly ruled out the possibility that it was a bird, but again, they don't specify anything. So at this point, we just have a lot of people making claims, but at this point, there's no reason to think that that a helicopter having a problem and having to land is anything out of the ordinary about this.
Well, let me, as probably the only helicopter pilot in this discussion,
yes,
between you and me,
I remember that. Yes.
And some of the other people involved, I know that if something damages the blades in some fashion, I think mainly a bullet's coming through them, because that was my experience with them. But it sets up a vibration. It can set up a vibration which could shake the aircraft apart. So if you start getting this vibration, the one thing you want to do is land immediately, if you can. But by the same token, bullets going through the rotor blades don't necessarily set up the bad vibrations. You can get around it. I don't remember any of our guys ever hitting a bird with the rotor blades, although we had a couple of bird strikes, birds coming through the windshield and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't sound very credible to me at all. But as I say, I didn't see the program because I was busy having dinner.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't specify exactly what happened. We really don't have any good firsthand information about this incident, the helicopter incident. Some people are trying to find that now. So hopefully before too long, we should have a little more information, know exactly what happened. But again, there's no solid evidence that anything out of the ordinary happened here.
Well, let's move on to the entire unidentified program and Luis Elizondo and all of this sort of thing.
Elizondo, yes. Well, he is now pretty much the voice to the stars in terms of the media and the TV program. I think they decided that, Tom DeLonge comes across as a little too unserious and a little too credulous. If you go back through the things that that he has said, I posted one of those videos from several years ago of Tom DeLonge on my blog. I posted the link with the caption, "Dude, where's my saucer?" Referring back, if you saw that movie, as a comedy about these guys get all drunk and stoned and can't remember where their car is and wander all over. And somebody asked Tom DeLonge, well, what about, tell me, who you want to hear about the aliens, man? Let me tell you about the pyramids on Mars, and this kind of thing. And you're thinking, my God, anybody is taking this guy seriously for anything concerning UFOs? And then, now, Elizondo was, he worked for the Pentagon, and he apparently was in some sort of military intelligence position. And he claims he ran this government UFO program.
Let me break in here to say one thing that bothers me immensely about all of this.
Yeah.
We had a program last week, the one number 5 or number 4, I forget which one, where they were looking at his military memorabilia, but they never give you a feeling for what position he held or what rank he held. And in the military, there's a lot of different military intelligence specialties. And I always, I was an intelligence officer in Iraq. And I always tell people my job was more like a journalist, more like a reporter. I was gathering information that I could pass along to our guys who are running convoys and that sort of thing, and riding with the convoys and making observations along the convoy routes and that sort of thing. So that doesn't really give me any expertise in running some of these other programs. And I could never get a sense of exactly what he did, what rank he held, and what kind of military specialty he had.
Right. Well, I don't know that either. I'm not sure anyone else does. Maybe you could get him on your program and ask him those questions. But as I understand it, he and the other guys from To the Stars will basically they'll only take softball questions from friendly journalists, like this guy, Brian Bender of Politico, who wrote several of the articles about them. Well, it turns out he's sort of like their house reporter. He turns up on the program all the time to say, oh, what an important and significant thing this is that they're doing. And, but, he's not going to ask questions like that. But some of these other guys, what was the name of the guy who wrote the other piece that questioned, John Greenwald.
John Greenwald.
Right. He's one of check this out. The Pentagon absolutely denies that Elizondo worked in any way with AATIP.
He was on a distribution list, which is
was on a distribution list. Probably a lot of other people were too, but he was not the head of this. In fact, he didn't work for it, and that's been confirmed a couple of different times by Pentagon spokesmen. So. But he has never really explained this. Well, why are they saying this, and why is he saying something different?
Well, I understand that, and it worried me greatly. And I would think that if you're in that kind of position in this program, if you've got wonderful educational credentials, a PhD from a prestigious college. I mean, my PhD comes from basically an online school, but it is accredited, but it's not that great of a situation. It's not like I got it from Harvard or MIT or something like that. But they never mention his educational background. They never really talk about his military service and what he did in the service. And I got the impression, and it's my impression only, that he was some kind of mid-level NCO, a non-commissioned officer, a sergeant of some kind, rather than one of the top officers running it. So I'm bothered by that. I talked to Alejandro Rojas about this over the weekend, and the program will be coming up here, by the way, in a couple of weeks on the A Different Perspective, who says that he's kind of talked to him about that and got some information on it, and said that his credentials are a little bit better than they're shown on the television program, but I still haven't seen anything to answer my questions about it.
Right, and if these guys want to be taken seriously, I mean, they've got to come forward and they've got to do better than this, and especially now that we've seen that they've been taken in by this Italian snake oil salesman, and they don't seem to have the least bit of skepticism about what he is claiming. The thing is, these guys are masquerading as experts. Elizondo is an expert on UFOs because supposedly he ran this program. Tom DeLonge is also an expert. Let's face it, they're not. I mean, and I've chronicled on there. I've got all kinds of articles on my blog about Elizondo and TTSA and so on, To the Stars. And I mean, made a number of mistakes when he was in Italy to speak to these guys, and he's talking, for example, about the Washington D.C. flap of 1952, and he's showing hoax photos, and he's saying this was widely witnessed by thousands. No, it wasn't. It was primarily just a radar thing, the jet pilots and so on. And he's made a number of mistakes. It's evident that as far as being an expert, Kevin, you're far more of an expert on UFOs than either one of them is, or any of these other people, who we know, Britt Rutkowski, or you mentioned Alejandro, or people like this, or Mark D'Antonio. These people know far more about UFOs than Elizondo does. They wouldn't make crude mistakes like this. And so, I have to go back to the idea that To the Stars is an entertainment company. And they've been very successful at that. Tom DeLonge must be a very good in terms of running a successful promotional thing. He's promoted himself as a rock singer, as a musician, and he's been very successful at that. And now he's apparently, turning those skills to promoting himself and his colleagues as experts on UFOs, when in fact they're not. It's like they have no idea what went on before them. They came along to this thing a couple of years ago, certainly within the last 10 years, maybe the last 5 years, and now they are claiming, that they're the experts and we should take seriously what they say.
Well, let me stop you right there because I'm going to have to break away for the last of our commercial messages. When we come back, I want to ask you about the Navy sightings, because we need to separate Alexandro from the Navy sightings and that sort of thing. The blog is www.badufos.com. Mine, of course, is www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And since we were talking about Socorro, I will mention Encounters in the Desert, which is my book about the Socorro landings. We will be back right after this, so stick around.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Ellie Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
Christopher Fulton is a survivor of the national security state. All he wanted to do was preserve history when he acquired a Cartier watch from the estate of President Kennedy's personal secretary. But that simple act set off a terrible chain reaction. He was pursued by the U.S. Justice Department and the FBI, thrust into the middle of the U.S. government's Assassination Records Review Board, even monitored and pursued by the Russian government. All because that Cartier watch was the missing link of evidence, a timepiece worn by JFK that fateful day in Dallas, a link resulting in Christopher being incarcerated and attacked for 9 years because he opened a hidden chapter in history. The intriguing journey outlined fully in Christopher Fulton's memoir, The Inheritance, is available now through TrineDay.com or Amazon.com. The Inheritance, Poisoned Fruit of JFK's Assassination by Christopher and Michelle Fulton is a must-read, an incredible tale of how easily our own government can overrule justice. The Inheritance, Poisoned Fruit of JFK's Assassination.
I am here with Robert Sheaffer. We are not in Roswell. Those shows will be coming up later. When we went away, we were talking about the leader of this whole unidentified program and some of the problems that I think a lot of us have with his background and his credentials. But the question I now have is that really doesn't affect the sightings being reported by the Navy, does it?
Well, it's not directly relevant. You're right. But let's be a little more careful, or should we say accurate, about this. Sightings being reported by the Navy.
Of the Navy officers
is telling us that these videos were released by the Navy. However, the Pentagon says that's not true. They did not release these. Now, Elizondo gave some sort of a document to George Knapp, the reporter, who is another one of these, shall we say, friendly softball reporters to the stars, and probably anybody else who makes UFO claims, like, for example, Lazar.
I was just let's not go down that road now, because we just don't have time.
But the point is that To the Stars claims that the Pentagon released these videos. They did not release them, although they apparently did belong to the Pentagon. So somebody leaked them, and we don't know who leaked them. Okay,
let's look at the
videos themselves. They appear to be distant aircraft. Metabunk, I don't know if you're familiar with the site Metabunk. It's by Mick West, who is a skeptic. And he is looking at the specifics of individual sightings and individual claims. And so if you go to Metabunk, I think it's .org, it's also on Facebook, it's also on Twitter, and it's also on YouTube. Mick West has quite a few videos there. He shows, for example, one of them says this gimbal UFO, the so-called, which is the one where the UFO appears to be tilted. The Tic Tac is the one where it appears to be level, relatively level in the video. The gimbal UFO is proven as a rotating flare. In other words, that as what appears to be the rotation of the object itself is just because of the way that the camera moves in the gimbal, and he illustrates this. So what we're seeing are basically, these pilots are told we have something on the radar at such and such a place. They go up to this place. Well, there's nothing up in the sky. There's nothing that they see. Now, in the case of the Tic Tac, they look down and they see something in the water or near the water, which is certainly, you can't assume it's whatever was allegedly up in the air and is now down in the water. This happens all the time. People go out and they say, well, there's a UFO out over such and such a place. You go to such and such a place, you don't see anything, but look over there in the other direction, there's a bright light, and that's Jupiter or something. So, I mean, this is what happens. People will kind of seize upon whatever they see and tie it into what was supposed to have been there. There's nothing, for example, the so-called go fast is just a parallax thing. It's either a bird or a balloon that, because the aircraft, let's say the aircraft is at 20,000 feet or whatever, and let's say that the balloon is at 10,000 feet, and they go over it at a very fast rate, hundreds of miles an hour, it's going to look like the balloon is moving backwards at hundreds of miles an hour with respect to the water. But again, that's just a parallax effect. So I'm saying if you want to get into the specifics of these videos themselves, I'd recommend you go to Metabunk and read the articles there that talk about this.
Well, you have the Navy pilots who are also giving their eyewitness testimony of the objects they saw. So it's not just these very short videos.
That's what I'm saying. But now in the case of the Tic Tac, there was nothing in the air. So then they looked down at the ground and, oh my gosh, there's something that looks, in the water, white and oval shaped. Well, so, in fact, one of the pilots on this thing said, well, it looked at first like a submarine. Well, maybe submarine surface or maybe a whale. There's a lot of whales in that part of the ocean right off the coast of California, Southern California. It's a very common sight. Did they see a whale come up? Maybe it was Moby Dick, the white whale. I don't think so, but maybe a gray whale. That's a possibility, or it could have been, who knows, some sort of maybe even a balloon, like a blimp or something that was below them, but way below them. The point is that this doesn't tie in with what they were originally seeing on the radars that was up. Now then Elizondo was going to say, well, we have the observable, and it went from 80,000 feet down to 0 feet, and then went under the water. And no, that's his interpretation of it. That's not really an observable.
But we have trained Navy pilots, and they're used to doing these sorts of things. And
they're
wouldn't
not
it be
used to going out and looking for being told there's unidentified objects? They're not used to that sort of thing. Also, remember what Alan Hynek said when he did in his Hynek UFO report. He said that surprisingly, pilots, both military and civilian pilots, make relatively poor witnesses. And he shows some comparisons and some examples of this. So just because, somebody is a highly trained pilot, they're trained to fly the aircraft. They're not trained to, observe and report.
Well, I would argue that a fighter pilot is trained to observe and be able to determine what's coming at him or her, because their lives depend on it if you get into a combat environment.
Well, yes, but in terms of, what has to be done to the aircraft, and not in terms of, well, what is this thing and so on. I mean, we have so many examples of this. The famous Gorman dogfight, going back to the classics of what was that, 1948 or something, way back there, 1950, something like that, where a pilot apparently fought a so-called dogfight with a balloon that had a light on it, and he wasn't. It was difficult for him to basically to tell, what was moving. You see relative motion. You don't see absolute motion when you're in the air, and so he was mistaken, and that's these are not the only. Instances like this. So I don't, again, I'm just.
What if there was additional videotape? And that's the thing that bothers me is
everybody keeps talking about that, but nobody seems to have it. And
what I was going to say is you got this very short videotape that seems inexplicable, and then you have some testimony from the pilots and the radar operators and a couple of other people. But if we saw the whole tape, maybe that resolves the whole issue, and so something is being disguised there.
Well, maybe, but we don't have the whole tape, so there's no point in speculating what it might reveal one way or the other. A lot of this has been discussed already on Metabonk in terms of, you can show that if you take a video, like an infrared video of a distant aircraft, you have something that looks, in many cases, very much like the Tic Tac, and also with the low data rate and everything that is, on these. I mean, these are not high resolution videos, so it's just because you see a blur. Because you've got effects from image processing and so on, especially in the infrared. If you remember, going back to the very first article in the New York Times, December 2017, that first broke this story about To the Stars with Leslie Kane and was it Ralph Blumenthal, both of whom, of course, are longtime UFO proponents, that they talked about, glowing auras. Oh, there's a glowing aura around it. That's supposed to be mystical. So we are the experts. We say there's a glowing aura and that's mystical. It's unexplained. No, it's not. It's just any infrared thing like that, with this, it has to do with the image processing algorithms, and the camera itself creates what looks like a glowing aura. And you can see this even on a video of a jet, of a distant aircraft. So it shows, again, these people are jumping to conclusions about videos that are not substantiated by actual fact, and they certainly have no knowledge of how these cameras operate or anything. So it's I think it shows very little, these videos.
And so you're suggesting that the image on the cameras may be some kind of an artificial artifact based on the way the cameras operate and the situation or the terrain in which they're operating. So we're getting
the object. It would be a real object. It almost certainly would be a distant jet aircraft, either a military or even a commercial, because the infrared is measuring only the heat. Is not an optical image. Now,
so we're not looking at an actual photograph. We're looking at an infrared image based on.
I think at some point they do switch over on the Tic Tac. They do switch over to visible light. But mostly what we're seeing is the infrared and the so-called glowing auras and everything.
Robert, this has been fascinating, but I'm out of time.
Oh my!
Yes, already, and I want to explore it further. You say this metabunk.org is a place to look at some of this conversation.
Yes,
of course.
Yes. And it's on Facebook and on Twitter. Metabunk. He's got several articles, and he's on YouTube also. And Mick West is the guy's name. Mick West, West. Look him up on YouTube and on Facebook and on Metabunk. There's a lot of information there.
And you have stuff at www.badufos.com.
Right.
Thank you so much for taking your time with us tonight. I appreciate all the information you've given us.
Okay, fantastic. My pleasure.
I will have more information up at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And what I say, as I said in the beginning, I've interviewed a number of people down in Roswell. We'll be putting those programs on the air here in the next few weeks. You'll get to hear some of the interesting things going on. And there were people I didn't get to, but I've got their information, and they've agreed to come on the program to talk about other aspects of the Roswell case, and even a solution, a place where the lost atoms, for those of you interested in those sort of things, the lost atoms is. Once again, my blog is www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com, and we will return in 167 hours with stuff from Roswell. So put that on your calendar and look us up. Thank you for listening.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide. They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Eli Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now to receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.